Hi, I'm Lynne Golodner, and you're listening to the Make Meaning podcast. I'm a former journalist and the author of 9 books, a writing coach, and a marketing expert. In this show, I interview authors and people in publishing about how they find inspiration, how they build their brands and choose their publishing paths, and most of all, how they find meaning in the mundane. If you want to learn more about how to get your writing career off the ground, visit my website, lynnegolodner.com, and check out the classes, programs, and retreats that I offer. And if you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or on any podcast platform where you find the Make Meaning podcast. I hope these stories give you the courage and confidence to make your writing dreams come true. Thanks for listening. Suzanne Nugent is a best-selling author and award-winning screenwriter committed to exploring women's lives through poignant comedy. She was shortlisted for the Academy Nichol Fellowship in Screenwriting and has received accolades from the Denver Film Festival and the San Francisco Writers Conference. She holds a dual degree in journalism and film from UMass Amherst and studied screenwriting at UCLA. Suzanne's debut novel, Brunch and Other Obligations, received a Best Book Award from American Book Fest. She hosts a weekly podcast called Character Development, where innovators, authors, and artists talk about creative process and real-life character arcs. I'm thrilled to welcome Suzanne Nugent to the Make Meaning podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to see you.
I know, me too. It's been a long time coming, and thank you for your patience, but it was my honor to be a guest on your podcast, Character Development, and I love the clever title of it, of course. So I wanted to start with that. You know, so much of what we do as writers builds our own character, even as we build stories for other people's enjoyment. And I wonder how you've changed over the years of your creative career, which really spans genres and endeavors. You know, how has writing developed who you are and who you want to be?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh my God. See, now I have to unpack that. See, that makes me want to go sit with my journal and write about that for a really long time and come up with a really good answer. Well, you know, that is very nice. You're a good journalist. Look at you with these questions. So there's a question being, how does it shape me? Well, I've heard versions of people saying before, so I'm not the originator of this notion in any way, but I write because I can't help it.
Yeah.
And I just write to figure things out. Actually, you just saw it in action. Immediately, As soon as you asked me a question, I'm like, I really don't know. I have to sit down and write about that. It's really hard to unpack my thoughts until I've written them down. And I write a lot of imaginary emails that never go out.
Oh, I would love to read those. That sounds really interesting. Yeah.
You know, but that's how I process things.
Yeah. Same. Me too. Yeah. And have you seen your voice change over the course of your career? Either voice or what you're obsessed with, like what you're writing about too, as you grow?
It's kind of always the same. It's kind of always, I always say I write funny stories about sad things. Mm-hmm. It's always about looking at things like grief or heartbreak and figuring out the way in through humor. I think the way people relate to each other is hilarious. So it's always about finding the connection among a group of people. Usually it's a group, maybe almost always 3, that have really nothing in common. And then they find a way in through something ridiculous. And it's kind of always about, it ends up always being about forgiving quirks.
Yeah.
So I think that's true in real life too.
Yeah. Well, you know, bravo to you for writing humor. I like to say I can be really funny, but just not on the page. So I always admire people who can. I think that's such a skill. But I do love that description of your niche as writing funny stories about sad things. And I'm curious about how that became your focus and why it's important to find humor in our hardest moments.
Well, I think it kind of developed through my culture and community. I grew up in an Irish Catholic home, and I think that's something that might be part of our culture growing up. People are hilarious at wakes. They just are. The jokes are really good. Brokenhearted, of course, and
Yeah.
really, really dark sadness, as you can kind of imagine. But
Yeah.
but there's a lot of humor and a way of coping. And I don't know, there seems to be, I keep finding my way in sad situations. My first job after graduating from college with a journalism degree was
Mhm.
writing obituaries.
I did that as an intern.
Did you really?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite a lesson, isn't it?
It is. It is. And there's no room for humor in that situation.
No,
And it
no.
wouldn't be appropriate. But at the time, the editors at the newspaper I worked at, they would throw me a couple of stories to write, and
Mhm.
I would seek out little stories to write. And after a while, the editor said, you write like a talker. And I'm
Hmm.
not sure if he meant it as a compliment, but I
Yep.
decided it was.
Yep.
And he put me in the arts department and gave me a column right away,
That's amazing.
which
That's so
it really
cool.
was. It was such a gift
Yeah.
because what I ended up doing is unpacking, daily life and finding either something profound about something hilarious or finding something funny about something sad. And
Yeah.
that it kind of started really early for me
Mhm.
in that way. So
Yeah.
I don't know. And I forget the second half of your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering why it's important to find humor in our hardest moments, or why you think it is.
I think if you didn't think things were funny, it would just be impossible to go on.
Yeah.
I just this is what we're here to do, is to kind of lift each other up in these
Mhm.
dark times, and not these dark times, but in the dark times we've had. In the last few years, I found it more necessary than ever to kind
Yeah.
of find some levity,
Yes.
some silliness, and that's, I think, so healing.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
salvation. It's like the saving grace is that we can laugh about something, or, lighten the moment. I think Jewish funerals could learn a thing or two from Catholic funerals, because they're not funny at all. And
Right.
we take ourselves very seriously. So
Yeah.
the Jews I know have a really hard time with death, because it's like, oh
Oh,
God, we're
right.
going in there now, like, um,
Yes.
so I think,
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't like it.
no,
We
no,
don't
no.
like the death. No, and
Yes.
I would say I don't know if it's all Catholics, but I know Irish in particular, we have wakes.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's not a lot of comedy, although yeah, I've ended up it's inappropriate laughter during the mass, but the wake where you're just, sitting around talking with a box of human remains in the room,
Mhm.
it is, what else can you do? There
Yeah.
is
It's an absurd moment,
It's
but it's real,
absurd.
you know?
Absurd. There's a
Yeah.
body in the room. What are we doing here? I don't know. I've always thought it was a little, I mean, you have to.
Yeah, it's funny. I spent a month this summer in Nova Scotia, and we did, when my husband and daughters were there with me for a part of it, we did a ghost tour of Lunenburg, which is the town near where we were staying. It's a really old town. It's from the 1750s, and it's really very interesting. And the architecture really represented the industry and the times and all kinds of superstitions. And they told us about how in the backs of the houses there were these like central windows that didn't seem like they should be on the back of a house, but the
Hmm.
purpose was to take a body out when somebody had died. So
Oh,
if they wanted to
geez.
do a wake, like, or whatever, like they couldn't get out the door. So
Yeah.
it's like, I'm like, oh, that's so fascinating. So
Uh,
there's a story
It's nice
there,
to have that built in.
right? Yeah. Well, it's a part of
Very
life. So
practical.
yes,
Yes.
yeah. Let's just prepare for all things, you know.
Yeah.
So I want you to know I ordered your novel because I knew that you were a screenwriter, but I didn't know that you had a novel out. I was so excited. So I can't wait to read it. So I want to hear about what inspired this novel and what was your journey to publishing.
Oh, thank you for asking this question. So the title, Brunch and Other Obligations, it popped into my head a long time ago before I even thought I would ever write a novel. I decided early that wasn't something I ever wanted to do. And I used to live in San Francisco. And at the time, it was a very big brunch culture. Every Sunday, that's, you get together with your friends, nobody had kids yet. So that's what we did on Sundays.
Hmm.
And brunch is such an unnecessary meal. There's just no other reason to do it except for to have a good time and
Sure.
talk and catch up.
Yeah.
And I looked over while I was waiting for my friends, and there were three women sitting together. They looked like they should be friends or could be friends.
Hmm.
And they were stone faced, and they were
Oh.
just eating their dinner, like eating their brunch as if they were at a cafeteria, just didn't like
Hmm.
engage at all. And I just thought, what is the point of this meal for these people? And I like look over and I just thought, this is an obligation for them.
Yeah.
And around the same time, because I had just moved there, a mutual friend had kind of set me up on a blind friend date with a group of their friends. And so my other friend and I went, and it was like, we just didn't get along. We just didn't get along. And I couldn't understand, how do we have the same best friend?
Yeah.
And so I always wondered what that dynamic is like, because, your friends don't always get along. But you kind of are stuck together through this mutual friendship.
Yeah.
And so the idea for Brunch and Other Obligations came to me of like, well, what if you were forced to have brunch with, your best friend's other best friend without that friend as the bridge?
Yeah. Interesting.
So that dynamic kind of stuck with me. And then I thought, that sounds like a novel, but I don't write novels. So then years and years passed, and I was home with my son, who was really young at the time. And, filmmaking and, you can write a screenplay by yourself, but ultimately the filmmaking is a collaborative process. There's a ton of people involved.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the bandwidth to be making things. And I love to make things and I love to tell stories. And so I thought this would be a good time. Why not, when you have a little baby, to write a novel? Right. Okay. That's crazy. But I decided to try it. And just little by little, I think I worked on it about between 6 and 9 hours a week. That's it.
Okay.
And so it took a long time, but around that time, I was thinking about it a lot. And I thought, maybe I won't do it. Maybe I will do it. And my friend, Carrie, hello, Carrie. I feel like she's definitely going to be listening.
We're going to tag Carrie. We want to make sure Carrie hears
Please do. Okay. So at the time, she had read Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert's book. And I wasn't reading anything because I had a little baby and I just couldn't. I just couldn't focus on words. And she kind of paraphrased it for me, which is what friends do when you have a new kid. And she told this like terrifying story. I think it sounds like a horror movie that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, where if you have an idea and you don't bring it into the world, it will just find another vessel or find another writer. You've heard this before. Yeah. Have you heard this before?
I have not. That's so interesting.
She talks about it, that it's like, an idea comes from wherever it comes from, and it's nothing personal. It chose you, but it doesn't need to be through you. So if you don't do anything with it, it's okay. It'll just find another writer. Okay. That is a nightmare to me. Like, that's horrifying.
Sure.
So Carrie looked at me and said, so I guess the question is, Suzanne, how would you feel if you walked into Barnes and Noble and Brunch and Other Obligations was on the shelf written by someone else? And I was like, I would fall down on the floor and really have a lot of trouble getting back up. Yeah. She just said, well, then you know what you need to do. And then the next day I hired a book coach and I started writing it.
Wow. How long did it take you?
It's hard to know because, my life at the time was so different than it is now. Sure. I wish I had an answer. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at metrics, word counts, and time.
So then I'll pivot.
Time. It took a long time.
How did it get into the world? Like, what was your publishing path?
Oh, wait, you know what? I want to tell you another thing about how long it took.
Yes.
I don't recommend the process that I took, because the first draft of it was written in first person. Okay. And it was more of an exercise to find my voice as a novelist.
Sure.
And so I wrote it in first person from the point of view of the friend who passed away. And it's a terrible thing because who is she talking to? Sure. Where is she? Ask all these questions. So that draft was a big garbage draft that needed to go in the trash. Okay. And I had to start over again. So that kind of adds a layer to how long did this take, because I did have to start over, having shown it to absolutely no one. I just knew this is not working because I couldn't explain where she was and who she was talking to.
Sure.
So, but it got my voice in it. I understood better the tone
Yeah.
of how I wanted to tell it. So,
And then
I
your
forgot the
publishing
next question.
path.
My publishing path.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it had taken so long, I decided that I wanted to go through a hybrid publisher.
Mhm.
I didn't go through the path of trying to find an agent and trying to go traditional. And I also knew I didn't want to learn how to self-publish. So
Yeah.
hybrid publishing was a good path for me because it had traditional distribution, which I
Mhm.
didn't want to learn. I wanted to write the
Mhm.
next story. And I also knew I just wanted to get it out.
Yeah.
Having tinkered with it for so many years, I was like, I'm done with them.
Yes.
These ladies, they're
Yeah.
lovely, but goodbye.
They need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I love that you did that. And, I mean, I was on your podcast when I announced Scotia Road Books.
I
And
know. It was such a scoop.
I know.
felt
I
so
loved
special.
it.
Thank you.
That was, yeah, no, it was great. It was such a fun conversation. And I feel like every day that passes, I'm more validated by this. And I get so excited by all the different choices people have with publishing, and that there's no easy path, but that it is a very unique and individual journey. And so
Yeah.
I like that we have options. And I love that you had the confidence to say, this is what's best for me at this time. And that's really cool. So you
I
straddle.
agree with you. I just
Yes?
want to say, I totally agree with you. And I do think we're very lucky to be in a time when there are so many options for getting your work out there. And it really, all of it depends on what vision you have for your career as a writer.
Right.
And there really is no one best way to do
Mhm.
it. And so
Yeah.
I think these are the questions that authors all have to ask themselves, like, what is my reason for publishing?
Yes.
And that kind of gets them to how they're going to do it.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I love that. It's such a good point. I mean, because you have to have the long view. And
Mhm.
it's one thing if you want to write one book and just put it in the world and then be done. And like, I'm not writing a book again. But
Yeah.
if your career is to be a writer, then you have to see the whole picture and
Yes.
decide what's going to build your staying power. Really.
That's true. Yes.
So,
And as a screenwriter too, it was important to me to retain the rights
mhm.
to my work because
Yes.
I do see things as adaptation opportunities as well.
Right. Absolutely.
So
So
that's my vision for it.
So
Yeah.
speaking of that, you fiction, screenwriting, audio interviews, like, do you have a favorite storytelling path, or do you just sort of straddle genres and whatever this particular story dictates right now, that's what I'm going to go with? Or, talk to me about that.
Well, I think the type of story is it kind of dictates what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Brunch and Other Obligations, I knew from the beginning was a novel.
Right.
And yeah, I think that is it. I think the story tells you. The story tells you. And that's what's fun to me is there are so many options. And I kind of get my journalism fix and my social fix from my podcast. I follow my curiosity to do that.
Sure.
And I really love talking to people on the podcast and getting their ideas about creativity and their processes and how it affected them. And so that is the outlet for that kind of following my curiosity as my old journalism days. But filmmaking is really a big passion of mine, and there are some stories that can be told in 2 hours in the dark. Sitting in the dark watching it.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure. Some of them just they come to me as pictures.
Okay.
And I think that maybe tells me which one, whether this is a novel or a screenplay.
Yeah. So what are you working on now?
Oh, okay. So right now I have a couple of projects that I'm still because we are by the time this airs, this won't be true anymore, but we're just coming out of the strike. So we are, still there's some paperwork that needs to be done before I talk about it. So I love so I'll say this broadly. I love adapting existing properties into films. And so right now I'm talking to a couple of novelists, one memoirist, and a short filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker. So that is just kind of what I'm doing, is trying to find which properties would lend themselves to a narrative feature. So I'm working on that. I also do have a novel that is, again, probably going even more slowly than Brunch and Other Obligations, but I love it. And I even have a sticky note here right now. I had an idea right before I logged on today. And so it's just, it's unfolding. And I like having a lot of different projects to work on at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I also love helping authors find a path to adaptation, because it's another way to see your characters have new life. Even when we made the audio book of Brunch and Other Obligations, to have a narrator or a voice actor do their interpretation of these characters, I thought, this is different. This is just a different thing.
Yeah.
And having that and producing that felt exciting. You just go, this is going to keep going and reach a different audience. So I just think it's so exciting to kind of keep your story going.
Yeah.
Once it's published,
Well, so we should talk about the film adaptation of Woman of Valor, my book that just came out, because
let's do it.
That could be so fun.
Yes, we do. I do want to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
What do you see? All right. Do you want to? So no, this is it's very tricky. I had to talk to myself before we got on here today to be like, remember that this is not your podcast. You cannot ask questions, but I can't help it because I want to ask you about your trip this summer. Like I love it. Really just holding myself back, but I want to ask about your trip. I want to ask about Scotia Road Publishing, and I want to talk about your adaptation. Yes.
Okay, so we have to just talk after the episode for sure.
I love it. I thought I was going to pivot this conversation to you. I love.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. But I want to highlight you, so that's why we're here today. But we'll have a to be continued conversation after this for sure.
Okay.
And we have to add to that list audiobooks, because I'm now it just sort of occurred to me at the Women's Fiction Writers Association conference. I was talking to people about it. I want to put an audiobook out there. It was really weird. I was being interviewed by someone for a magazine about the book. And she's like, I listened to the first 3 chapters of the audiobook. And I'm like, hold on, there is no audiobook. Like, what are you telling me? Like, did somebody
of yours?
Like,
did somebody hadn't even recorded?
No. Yeah. So I'm like, did somebody steal my obscure book? And like, just, anyway, the journalist just made a mistake. And I guess read like some chapters from the PDF that she put into like, Word, and it could like read it.
It was like an AI voice or something.
Right.
Okay.
But I'm like, okay, hold on. So like I was in overdrive thinking like, what do I need to do? Do I need to call my attorney? Whatever. But I know it's like, cause I mean, I'm new at this. And so I do love the idea of the audiobook. I will say, and then we're going back to you, that on my drive home from Nova Scotia in the summer, which I did by myself, which was like a huge coup for me because it was like 22 hours or something. And it was like, I'd never done that by myself before, but I listened to 2 audiobooks, and I never usually do. Like usually I'm listening to podcasts or music or whatever. And both were they were memoirs, and both were read by the author.
Yes.
And they both had lovely voices. Now, one of the authors was an actor, the other was not, but still did a great job. And I think because it was a memoir, it really lent some, I guess, realism to the book because it was the author reading it. And I know that normally it needs to be a voiceover actor or someone who has that presence and knows how to do it, but they did a great job. And so it got me thinking about, well, I do a podcast. Couldn't I read my book?
Absolutely.
So that's the plan.
Absolutely. Right, and I would say to you, because you are very experienced on the mic and you sound great. You absolutely can do this. Memoirs do lend themselves to it perfectly because you can even skip a few words if you want and just be telling a story. Some comedians, when they do their own audiobook, it sounds like they are improvising because they're really kind of just generally using the words. If you followed along, it would not be word for word. They're just talking. And so it does kind of feel very natural. I considered narrating my own audiobook as well, but because there were some characters that wouldn't be appropriate for me to do the voice for, I decided not to. And then I also just got way too into my own head about it. And I just said, forget it. I'm not doing this. And it's a very specific skill.
Yes.
But you have it.
Yeah. Well, so we'll see. So that's on the list. It's on the list. So lots of things to do when you put a book in the world for sure.
It's true. It's true.
So that's there, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, but maybe next month. We'll see. So,
Okay. I'll check back on this.
Yes, we will keep talking
on this.
So I want to ask, as our conversation nears its end, what advice you might offer for aspiring writers who are listening to this podcast?
There are so many supposed to's, and I think you have to listen to 0 supposed
Mm-hmm.
to's.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been asked about that before, writing before. And I also feel like there's a lot of parenting advice that's similar, where people are like, what's your best advice on parenting?
Mm-hmm.
And what I say to new parents is the same thing I want to say to writers, which is, when people give you their advice, they're often telling you what they didn't do.
Yeah.
Or that they wish they had done. And that's mostly about sleep training.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But
So
it
true.
also applies to writing. People say, oh, do this, do that, or I wish I had done that. They're telling you their regrets.
Yeah.
They're not really telling you what they actually did. So I don't know. And I don't even know that I would follow my own advice, or I don't even know that I would do the same. I don't know how to write a book. I've written a book, but I don't know how. And every time I go to a new project, I go into it as a total beginner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that trips everybody up always in life is the idea that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. I love that.
Just
this is great advice.
Is this advice? I was trying to give the anti-advice. Like, don't listen to anyone's advice.
Well, that's advice. I love it. I think it's really smart. So yeah.
All right. We'll go with that.
Perfect way to answer.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Well, I'm glad we had this talk. I don't know what I've said.
Yes. Well, you're funny even on a podcast, but poignantly. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, Suzanne Nugent, it's been so great having you on the Make Meaning podcast.
This has been fun. It's always fun to talk to you.
Yeah, same. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Make Meaning podcast with Lynne Golodner. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you've heard, subscribe and share this episode with the meaningful people in your world. And please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more at makemeaning.org or lynnegolodner.com.